These transplants don't look that hot right now. Some of them got some leaf spots on them. I'm sure they're root bound. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having a fantastic day. It is Saturday, November 4th here in South Georgia. And on today's video, we got a few more little gaps here to fill in some of our raised beds. So we're gonna try to plug in some of those gaps there. Also gonna see if our onions are ready to transplant because it is November and we need to be getting those in the ground soon. So while most of these raised beds are packed to the brim, we do have a little bit of space left. We've got some space left here in this collard bed, right down the center where we can plant something. And then I've also got some space right in the middle of this kale bed here. Just as a side note, not long after we transplanted our kale, something started working on them pretty dang hard. You can look at some of that curly kale over there. You can see it got chomped on pretty good. Now, I don't know what it was, never saw the culprits out here, but it appears that, you know, they ate a little bit and kind of stopped. I don't know if the good guys have helped us out some. I never did spray these. I was going to, but then they looked like they were recovering, so looks like they'll be all right. And then over here by the greenhouse, we've had to move all our veggie transplants outside because the greenhouse is packed to the brim with fig starts. I'll tell you more about those on an upcoming video. But we've got some extra stuff here. Still got some lettuce we can work with there. Got some rutabaga transplants over there. Got a few celery transplants we can work with. And then I also wanted to show you our onions here. So earlier this week, I gave these onion transplants one last trimming before we go in the ground with these, hopefully within the next week. They're looking good, starting to thicken up some. Now, we could certainly leave these in this tray another 2 or 3 weeks, wouldn't hurt them at all, but I think they're big enough to go in the ground now. If we take a look at one of these timon transplants here, we can see we've got a decent root system on there, starting to thicken up the base a little bit. Like I said, you could let these get bigger, but I'm fine with planting them just like this. So stay tuned for some onion planting action. That'll probably be coming on a video sometime next week. Now let's grab some of these extra transplants and head back over there to the raised beds. Now before we put down an extra drip line or two and fill in the space in this bed, we've got a bunch of little weeds popping up here. And I want to show you this neat little tool that a viewer sent us. So this is like a little mini stirrup hoe. This thing is really neat and really useful for raised beds. So you just get in here and kind of cut all those roots out of there, and you can really clean up a good bit of space in a short amount of time with this nifty little tool. I think you got this off Amazon. You can probably find it pretty easy. I don't remember the name brand, but I sure have been liking it. So I think I'll put some more lettuce in this bed, maybe a drip line here, maybe a drip line there, and we'll just stack it full of lettuce in the middle, and then we have our collards on the end. And I'm going to put down a little bit of pre-plant fertilizer. Before we do that, just on this little middle gap here, put down some coop grow. That should be good enough. I'm going to scratch it into the soil a little bit with my little bitty stirrup hoe. And I've got 2 drip lines here cut to the approximate length I need. I'll probably have to trim them off a little bit on the end. This is a 15 mil thickness tape, I believe, with a 6-inch emitter spacing, which works pretty good on lettuce. So we're going to install our row start fitting here first, and we'll get some holes punched in here. I'm going to put them as close to the center as I can. Scoot that over a little bit, pop a hole in there. There's one line. Alright, so those 2 new drip lines are in, held down with some staples. And so what we're basically going to be doing here is some succession lettuce planting. Let me show you what I mean. So we've already got some lettuce right here. This was planted not too long ago, and it's already growing really fast, looking great. As I've told y'all before, lettuce is one of the easiest things to grow because all you got to do is put down a pre-plant fertilizer like that coop grow, keep it watered, and you'll have some beautiful, beautiful groceries. And although these heads aren't nowhere close to full size yet, we will probably start plucking some of these out of here pretty soon. So we'll start cutting some of these as baby heads, cut a few heads every other day or so, and eventually work our way through this bed. And since I don't want to just all of a sudden run out of lettuce in another month or so, I thought we'd plant some more. Now, these are the same transplants. It's the same tray that gave us this bed right here. These transplants don't look that hot right now. Some of them got some leaf spots on them. I'm sure they're root bound, but I think we can get them looking pretty good with some water and some healthy soil in that bed over there. So we'll have these to eat this month, and then hopefully these will be right behind them. So this isn't as ideal as if we would have just planted more lettuce in the greenhouse about a month after we planted that first round and had some nice healthy looking transplants to put in the ground. But I have done this before. If I've got extra transplants, I always hang on to them for a little while, keep them watered, even though they might start looking a little rough. I know I've got them if I want to fill in some gaps and do a little succession planting like we're doing today. All right, so now I've got my drip lines turned on. We can see the water dripping out of there, and we're just gonna pack these in here pretty tight. Probably won't be giving them enough space to get full size, but we can harvest them as little baby heads of lettuce. We're gonna probably do a double row here, so we'll plant on this side of the tape, and on that side of the tape, same thing with that line as well. All right, so now we're utilizing our bed space a lot better. We should now have a good continual supply of lettuce for the next few months, and we found a good use for some of those crappy looking transplants. So if you've got some older, kind of rough looking transplants, don't just chunk them. If you've got some extra space in your garden, throw them in there. A lot of times with some good fertilization, pushing them a little bit, they'll come out of their funk and end up giving you some really good groceries. So now we need to fill this middle space in our kale bed, and I think this is where we'll put some celery and some rutabagas. I don't think I'll put 2 drip lines down here, just kind of one as close to the middle as I can get it. All right, so our drip line is in place there. I'll probably plant on this side of that drip line. That way the plants are kind of right down the middle of the bed. I've got about 5 or 6 rutabaga transplants there, and I've got just a few celery transplants here. Now, while I usually always recommend growing your own transplants, celery is one of those things you should probably just buy if you can find them locally. These seeds take forever to germinate, and these transplants take forever to get going. Now, this here will make a nice celery plant, but out of the 9 or so cells that I put celery seeds in, I ended up with 3 good-looking transplants. So don't stress too much over growing your own celery plants. It's really, really difficult. I would say lettuce is probably the easiest thing, and then celery is one of the hardest. And if you're just going to come out to the garden and pluck you a few celery stalks as you need them and not cut the entire head, you really don't need that many celery plants. Now, I'm planting 3 plants here because that's all I've got, but this 3 plants should be enough. That one there is pretty dry. Hopefully that water gets it back to life pretty soon. So this doesn't look like a lot of celery, but it should be enough. Like I said, these plants will produce a lot of stalks, and we'll just cut a few stalks at a time and let them keep growing. And then on the rest of our tape here, we'll put these 5 rutabaga plants. I'll just kind of try to equally space them out here. Maybe I've got enough to go 1 per emitter. Now these are pretty dry and root bound, but that's okay because I'm not really growing these for the actual rutabaga. I like rutabagas, okay, we'll eat them, but what I'm going for is the greens here. So let's get these little plugs in the ground so that drip tape can start nourishing them a little bit. So even if you don't like rutabagas, or Swedes as they call them across the pond, you ought to try growing some just for the greens. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of rutabagas. It's kind of like broccoli. When you cook them and make the whole house smell like a poot. And I'll eat them, but I'm just not super crazy about them. But rutabaga greens are some of the best greens out there in my opinion. So plant you some rutabagas. Even if you don't like the rutabaga itself, feed it to the chickens or pigs or goats, whatever animals you got, and save those greens because they are absolutely delicious. And so now that those gaps are filled in those 2 beds, that pretty much puts us full here in all the raised beds. I do still need to find a spot to put some parsnips and some spinach. Might do that here in this basil bed. Just been letting this basil go, let it flower as much as possible. The bees are just tearing it up. They're loving this stuff, so I didn't want to take it from the bees. but I've got some space here in the middle I can work with. Maybe get some spinach and some parsnips in there. So I hope you enjoyed the video today, and remember, you can take a crappy plant and turn it into a happy plant if you feed it well enough and have some nice healthy soil. So don't chunk these, find a home for them so you can have some more good groceries. And as always, you can find links to our affiliate partners and coupon codes in the description below. Also, don't forget to go check out our website, lazydogfarm.com, where you can find that Coop Grow fertilizer we used earlier, and also the AgriThrive fertilizer we use a lot in our backyard garden. And if you want to know more about our irrigation system, how we use drip tape versus drip tubing, check out this video right here we did a while back comparing drip tape and drip tubing, which we think is better for certain applications. So check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.